Welcome back. Welcome back to the Pouch, the podcast.
Your horoscopes for today.
Yes.
Sagittarius. You may...
Belligerent as always.
Yeah. Aries.
Less belligerent, but still belligerent.
Yeah. Also,
your friends would still call you
notes.
belligerent, but not as belligerent.
The other ones. I don't...
Yeah.
Oh, there's one that I apparently align to. Taurus.
Yes.
Stop being a bull.
Stop being bullish.
Yeah.
I like the fact I get notifications that the Pouch, the podcast has gone live.
Yeah.
Like my phone just starts lighting up and it's like, oh, Facebook,
Ding.
Twitch, YouTube. Yay. All right. Hello and welcome to the Pouch, the podcast equivalent of Hello and welcome to the Pouch, the podcast equivalent of mystery tomato sauce on your favorite white shirt that takes a not so serious look at the week in Australian news and politics. I'm Greg. At least my new puppy is cute 85% of the time. Savage.
And I'm Jake. Debt and deficit just doesn't matter anymore, Far Wharton. On today's episode, claiming victory despite opposition. And the first few announcements from the upcoming budget. And so much more, Greg.
Very exciting about that budget. And Jake, while we're as snug as a bug in this proverbial rug, I want to know, how are you celebrating the birth of Queen Elizabeth?
I'm going to learn to perfect my wave. Spoiler alert, I'm going to learn to perfect my wave.
That's very good.
It's going to wave at the masses. Hello, masses.
I don't know how much better you can get at that, Jake. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, look, I feel like I had a neutral expression rather than an expression of disdain for the commoners. How dare you get so close to me?
All right. Now, a few things going on, Jake. Obviously, yesterday, huge news overseas, and I'll be honest with you, I've been kind of glued to that. So this is a great opportunity for me to dive back into the world of Australian news and politics. I did happen to see the ticker down the bottom was talking about a couple of bushfires, Jake. So we're back into bushfire season, back into bushfire territory. We obviously had a few up in the Northern Territory a few weeks ago. With this, over the last 24 hours or so, we've had the Oakey Creek bushfire, Oakey Creek Road bushfire in Cooktown. I think one home has already been destroyed in that. So, this is not a great start to the bushfire season. And Tasmania, St. Helens has a fire down there, which apparently has been listed as being under control now.
Well, that's good. That's very good.
Yeah,
I had one near me the other day. It's always a somber thing when you walk outside and you look up and it's just that brown haze and you're sort of wondering, is this an approaching storm? For goodness sake, let it be an approaching storm. We could really use some water. Or is it indeed bushfire season? And it was the latter.
Yeah, it's very concerning. Very concerning. So happy recheck your insurance day. Basically, that's what I'm going with. I'm pretty sure tomorrow is that day for us. We're going to sit down and have a look at things, make sure that everything's hunky-dory for us here in the Blue Mountains, of course. Dear me. So, yes, thoughts with everyone there, and thank you to all the crews who are doing a wonderful job already keeping people safe.
Yep, keeping them safe.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Now, Jake, a little bit of a warm-up before we jump into it.
Grease the wheels.
Grease the proverbial wheels, as they say, or what do they say? You can't make an omelette without cracking a few eggs, and in this case,
you can't gaslight without gas.
You can't gaslight without gas, and you can't moo without emu. Now,
true.
Yeah, emu eggs are selling for $30 each.
Yeah,
as they gain renewed popularity with consumers in none other than Western Australia.
Yeah. This makes perfect sense to me because they hate chickens in Western Australia. They just hate them.
Hang on.
They're just like, chicken Western. Over there. What's this? Why have you got a chicken? We hate them here in Western Australia.
Yeah, I'm just making a note to move to Western Australia.
Yes. There's huge populations of native emus there, but they also do have emu farms because emu meat is one of those rare and interesting flavored.
Don't want to know about that, Jake.
Types of meat, but they also have these massive eggs. these massive eggs about the size of a infant child. There's the size of the infant child's head. Like they're massive eggs.
They are huge.
They apparently do taste similar to chicken eggs.
Right.
But I must say, having tasted an emu egg, they don't.
Have you tasted one?
Yeah.
When?
Oh, years ago, Greg.
Right.
When I was going through my chicken hating phase.
Yep. It's a maturity thing, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. Now I've matured. I love chickens again.
How funny. Now, if I've got this right, Jake, I might actually be able to bring this up on the screen. There we go. It's giant. It's covering our head, but I do actually have a picture of the emu eggs.
Yeah, they're black
on the screen. I don't know where to put them, but they're there.
They're like a black or an aubergine type color.
Yeah. They look delicious. I mean, they are huge, though, aren't they?
They are massive, and they're very, very. What is it? So you got the yolk, which is the yellow stuff. What's the white stuff? The egg white.
Yeah, the non-yolk.
They got a huge amount of the egg white.
I don't know where to put it. Anyway, that's the emu eggs. I'll put it between us. So the free-range emu farm became licensed to emus in 1987. Rode to the height of emu farm craze when it was about 50 emu farms operated throughout Western Australia. Goodness me.
That's fantastic. Greg, you live in Sydney, or you live in New South Wales, rather.
I do.
And I assume occasionally you do make your way into Sydney.
Yes.
Do you?
It's where I do my shopping.
Do you?
I have the best IGAs.
I'm aware of the deconstructed food craze, where particularly for hipsters, you go to a hipster restaurant and you get like a deconstructed, smashed avo on toast, where they just they give you a plate of wheat and you grind it down with a mortar and pestle, and then they give you an avocado seed and you have to grow the avocado. No, where they deconstruct the food, they make you make the food essentially.
Yeah. Of course. Like a Korean barbecue.
Yeah, I wonder yeah, exactly. We've been doing it for years. I love the idea of a deconstructed emu on toast, or emu egg on toast.
Emu egg on toast, yeah, not an emu. Put it together.
Just put a massive.
It's a puzzle.
Just put it in front of you and get you to teppanyaki it yourself.
All right, let's get serious, Jake.
Yeah, it's about bloody time.
Enough with this hipster food nonsense. Okay, now the biggest news of the week is this Narrabri gas project, and it's been approved. Yeah, that's right.
Yes,
we're approved. We're happy to go. We're loving the gas. Not divisive at all. All of Australia's on board with this,
except for the rest of Australia that isn't.
No one's got anything negative to say about it, and they're happy that it's being rushed through. So tell us about what's happening with this, with the how am I saying it right? Narrabri gas project.
Yeah. I've been to Narrabri a few times. It's a beautiful old country town.
Yeah.
So yes, look, the gas project at Narrabri, which was one of the things that was announced by both the Prime Minister and Angus Taylor some months ago. Has now been approved and it's on its way to commencing thinking about building. But yes, they've
got the IKEA kit ready to go.
Exactly. Yes, so many Allen keys. You got no idea when you have to drill that deep into the ground to start fracturing shale in which the gas pockets are trapped in. Lots of Allen keys. Yes. So the Nationals frontbencher Mark Coulton, who is the local member for that area, has declared the controversial Narrabri gas project as a winner for his community, despite continuing and vocal opposition from landholders, environmentalists and indigenous traditional owners. Now, on the premise of the landowners, a lot of these fracking projects where they do have to drill quite deep down, and then they fill it with various different. They fill those deep bores with lots and lots of gases, water, other substrates as well, in order to fracture essentially the shale in which the pockets of gas are sitting in. A lot of them are around water basins. A lot of them are around farming properties, etc. So there is legitimate concern, and there has been for some 20, 30 years when in the US gas, particularly the fracking, took off prolifically, and there's been a lot of evidence of.
Is this in Maine, like that you can set the water on fire, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, there's things like that, and you do have to take those individual accounts with a reasonably large grain of salt. Just because you never know. I mean, they might be doing it in order to discredit what has occurred.
Okay.
Anyway, they're personal cases. They're individual anecdotes rather than quantified data and evidence, etc. But it is one of those interesting things that you do need to consider things like, because there are lots and lots of chemicals in the water that the gas producers pump into the ground in order to fracture the shale. And given that it is close to water tables, and given that it is on farming property, they are considerations that you do have to make in terms of degradation to water quality, particularly over generations. If it gets into the water table, it can be there for a significant amount of time. And if it's on farming land, you've got to consider what are you going to do in that area instead of livestock or instead of growing stuff. For the foreseeable time. But yeah, look, it is a massive thing with coal seam gas development being a divisive issue in regional Australia. The National Farmers Federation last week warned that the Morrison government to tread carefully with its much vaunted gas-led recovery after the coronavirus pandemic. The National Farmers Federation affiliate New South Wales Farmers has voiced its very vocal opposition to the Narrabri gas project. So yes, despite these objections, Mark Coulton has claimed victory, said it's going to be a win for the community. There's going to be a whole 10 jobs created.
Is that what it is?
And they're not massive. They're not massive projects. I mean, there is a certain amount of jobs that are created in order to set up the thing, but largely once they're in place, they just run, and then you tap them.
This is like an automated system.
Largely, there's very very limited interaction or intervention that needs to be made by humans.
Right. Okay. Well, I don't know. That's kind of good too, isn't it?
It is, but you can't necessarily claim that something is a job creator if it doesn't create jobs.
That's true. All right, we'll come back to that, Jake. We'll be able to keep everyone up to date with what's happening with that one, and hopefully the people of Narrabri are happy with it. I'm sure that there's a little bit of division there, but hopefully a few people get some jobs out of that. Hopefully it is good for the community, at the very least. And we know that there's not a great deal. Like there's not a lot of opposition to this from Labor, is there? Like Labor aren't saying that they wouldn't do this, are they?
No, not really. I mean, the thing is that these are private companies that are purchasing the licenses, purchasing the permits in order to do this gas exploration and drilling.
Yeah.
So given that it is, and one of our major exports for Australia is gas.
Right.
We don't necessarily use so much. I think it's like 18% of our power in Australia uses gas, uses methane, etc., or liquid natural gas. But most of it we export overseas. So look, it is a private institution that has requested the ability to do this. It's been approved. It's so highly unlikely that Labor would stand in the way of that, unless they had a principled policy that says, no more gas.
So it's got here, while political and business support for the project has been significant, the registered public response has been overwhelmingly against. So it's really like a public backlash against this one. The department received nearly 23,000 submissions during its deliberations. Nearly 80% were opposed on a range of grounds, including that it could damage groundwater relied on for agriculture, lead to a loss of pressure in the Great Artesian Basin, affect biodiversity in the Pilliga forest, and release substantial greenhouse gas emissions. Opponents include local farmers, scientists, conservationists, and those who do not believe the economics stack up. A former National Chief Scientist, Penny Sackett, said it was at odds with the Paris Agreement and cutting emissions to net zero by 2050, a target backed by the New South Wales government and many in business, but not Morrison. It is it's a weird thing. I suppose if I can make a crossover with the coronavirus, we've talked a lot about how the government, we praise the government for listening, whether it's the state government or a federal government, to listening to scientists about what's happening, right? You say, okay, like you say, Jake, you get the best people in the room and you listen to those people, and then you take on that advice and you take the rap for sort of making those decisions, I guess. Whereas here, we have a lot of opposition to this from scientists, from conservationists, from local farmers, and they're still going ahead with it. So, it's a bit of a puts everyone in a bit of a conundrum, and especially with the climate and energy policy being in the foreground of your state election, Jake.
It is, but one thing I would say is that any government making decisions on major projects, and particularly controversial or potentially controversial projects like gas, is that you have to balance out things. You have to balance out invariably you have to make an economic argument as much as you do have to make a science-based argument. And it should be acknowledged that the policies that the government took to the last election included energy production by way of fossil fuels and they do somewhat refer to gas as a slightly renewable energy, but they did take that to the election, that they would be most likely continuing things like mining, that they were in opposition to things like the Labor climate policies, like the Greens climate policies. They were all about ensuring that we keep the jobs where they are, that we continue to dig up rocks and dig up fossilized gas.
All right, a couple of comments coming in on Facebook. Fred Stokes says, in Queensland, it's not fracking, but they remove groundwater, which releases pressure so that the gas can escape the coal seam. They do not capture all released gas, so it seeps into the water table. Fracking is even worse, as Jake says. The gas company I sold to had so little idea what they were doing under the ground that due to the loss of pressure underground, their pump sizes changed from 110 kilowatts down to 37 kilowatts in 1 year. And if I've got it right, you actually need to make more. You need more holes in the ground for this type of mining for gas.
It really depends, and I mean, it's been some time since I looked at the way that fracking essentially, that shale fracturing occurs. But in many ways, you don't necessarily need to make a whole bunch of holes. You can just make one, and essentially you pump so much, like a tremendous amount of stuff, down into that layer. And the pressure is what fractures shale from a significant distance around, and forces that to fracture and then combine in that cavern essentially that you've created.
All right. Well, interestingly enough, hopefully it does well for the economy. And speaking of doing well for the economy, Jake, it's budget week. How exciting is this? Now, if I've got this right. There's three big ticket items on the agenda for our budget this year, which is very exciting, almost as exciting as me doing my own budget. I'm almost as excited about that. I think I memorized this. So it's business incentives, infrastructure projects, and tax cuts.
Yes,
that's what's on the agenda.
Those are the three major ticket items. That's right.
Yeah, big ticket items. Yeah, and I hear that they're also going to be giving grants to indie podcasters, Jake.
Yeah, look, there have been a couple of announcements about that. No telling as to what shade of hair they needed to have in order to qualify for those grants. But there is some reason to hope that it would be peppery.
All right, give me some real deets, Jake. Give me the DEETSs of the sitch.
Well, it's quite an interesting one. I wanted to talk about really the tax cuts and some of the red tape cuts that they're looking at, because we've obviously talked a little bit about the infrastructure projects over this last week of daily podcasting. But yeah, thousands of small businesses will get access to tax breaks and red tape cuts. Which is essentially deregulation of various things under a $112 million plan outlined in this week's federal budget. As part of the package, the Morrison government will increase the small business entity turnover threshold from 10 million to 50 million for 10 different tax concessions. Can you believe that, Greg?
No, because I don't know what that means. Increase the small business entity turnover threshold.
Yeah, essentially,
I think I
you're
understand
allowed
one
to.
of those words.
It means that for example, if you're a small business, you're allowed to be classified as a small business previously if you
Right.
turned over only 10 million or less.
Right.
Whereas now you can be classified as a small business even if you're making 49.999 million.
Okay, now this will be if I'm just making a link here with something else that I happen to know about the economy, the second thing, which is that now small businesses, if they go, I think it's insolvent, they're able to take control of their own assets and see if they can trade their way out of it rather than having to hand over to a third party.
Yes.
So this would have flow-on effects to that policy as well?
It may. The big thing here is that if you do, so number one is you can't necessarily trade insolvent, although there are some reasons to suggest that you can in some cases. The main thing is that you. So
well, that's what they're doing at the moment, isn't it? Like at the moment, they're allowing small businesses to trade while they are insolvent.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, the commentators have referred to them as the zombie businesses. Essentially, the businesses that have been propped up by JobKeeper and other schemes, essentially allowing them to remain, allowing them to continue to employ the workers as well as potentially the management on a lower salary.
Right.
But they don't have enough trade. They don't have enough customers or whatever it is that they do as part of their business. They don't have enough business going on in order to essentially have a positive cash flow.
Okay.
But whether those businesses are able to continue when things open up more prevalently is sort of another question.
Yeah.
But yeah, so moving on, among the major concessions that will apply to these smaller businesses will be they don't have to apply for the 47% fringe benefit tax on small businesses. They don't have to. There's a whole range of these things. It's but it's quite good. It's sort of cutting away the regulation around small businesses. The government's also going to remove the 47% fringe benefit tax on retraining provided by employers to redundant or soon to be redundant workers, because there was obviously in the lead up to the removal of the JobKeeper levels, the government did suggest, look, we want to make it as easy as possible too. If you're going to make someone redundant, particularly a position redundant, and maybe you've got space elsewhere in your business for that same person, and you can retrain them, you're going to need to spend education dollars on it, but that may count towards FBT. So they've been able to rejig things so that that's able to flow a whole lot more smoothly, which is great.
That is great.
It is good. One more announcement, which
Jake,
is great for people
exciting.
like me who do like a beer. In another measure, brewers and distillers will be able to pay and report excise monthly rather than weekly, helping them with their cash flow.
How does that help with cash flow?
It just does.
Okay.
No, essentially it means that if they have one bad week, they're not heavily penalised. So they're able to average things out, or they're able to accumulate money over a month instead of basically saying, oh well, I'm out of money this week, so I suppose we're done. They've got another 3 weeks essentially to make that up.
Wow. Okay. All right. So cutting a bit of the red tape, as they say, Jake. Bit of the red tape.
Bit of the red tape. Yeah.
Nice work. Go small business. I know that there's been a few wins for small businesses out of this budget, which I think is seems like a very strategic and well thought out approach. Hopefully that all trickles down and we can live happily ever after with all of these small businesses not going under. I do know that, like you said, with those zombie businesses, that they're some of the estimates for how many of these zombie businesses are going to have to apply for becoming, I don't know the technical terms for it, but, like insolvent, some of them are pretty astronomical, up in the tens of thousands even of businesses who are running at the moment who don't actually know that they'll need to apply for that insolvency. So hopefully, that hopefully there's a bit of a crossover, and these businesses can maintain their businesses.
I've got a bit of a personal story in that regard, Greg. If you like,
let me play the personal story music, Jake.
That'd be great.
I don't have. I've only got a triangle, apparently.
It can involve sad violins. That'd be great.
That's all I got.
This is a very first world problems thing, so don't think lesser of me, listeners. But as many listeners might know, I have celiac disease, and there is one fast food place that makes deep fried chicken for people with celiac disease like me, for gluten-free individuals.
Right.
And they had a franchise and several locations. And I traveled to every single one of those locations this week that were listed on their website as still being open. And unfortunately, they've closed. All of their stores closed. So I can no longer get, because this is all about me.
Yes, not about them.
I can no longer get gluten-free fried chicken.
Look, you hope that these people are... obviously if you start your own business, if you go, yes, I'm going to do this, you're obviously creative, you're obviously driven. And so hopefully there's some crossover, whether or not these people just have a bit of a break and then they come back in some other format or something like that. They go and work somewhere else or do something else for a bit and then come back in another format. Or if they've already got an idea for another business and that's what they've decided to put their all their emu eggs into one basket in the sense that this is now the new COVID normal. So, people aren't looking for whatever weird food you eat, and they're looking for something else, and that's the market that they're getting into. So hopefully it's not just a case of, oh, well, that's all done, I'm going back to to just do a normal job or whatever. Like, hopefully these creative driven people figure their way out of it.
You'd certainly expect to. I mean, there's been a lot of talk in academic circles around the serial entrepreneurs and people who get an idea. They're slaving away at their grind, at their job for decades, and then they realize, no, I want to go into business for myself. And then they try a couple of businesses. A lot of businesses, particularly early on ones with young entrepreneurs, they quite often fail, or they have a couple of pivots. But there's a lot of evidence suggesting that the people who ran businesses are very likely, in fact, to get back into the next business.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good news. A little bit of light at the end of the tunnel there, with a little bit of assistance laying down the tracks from the government, Jake, if you will. Now, speaking of laying tracks, Jake, I can fly to New Zealand and I can frolic around New Zealand free as a bird. Go to all of Hobbiton and whatever else they've got. I think that's all they've got now is the Lord of the Rings thing that they're hanging on to.
Free as a cow.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other reason to go to New Zealand. Then I can go there and I can fly back and everything's hunky dory. I can meet Jacinda Ardern and buy a few tea towels and then come home and it's all good. Done.
A few commemorative teaspoons.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's exciting.
It sounds amazing, but not all of us are going to get to go, Greg. It seems that your home state of New South Wales, as well as South Australia, will be among the first states to benefit from New Zealanders being allowed to travel to Australia. And the reason for that is quite simple, because I was thinking, I immediately went to the whole thing of, look, okay, clearly there's a bit of politics going on here. Queensland's been vocal about our borders and keeping our borders. Thus, the Prime Minister has said there is no way that we're allowing this to Queensland. We're not going to allow them to benefit from this just really great thing that we're doing at the moment. But actually, it's very practical. The reason why it is New South Wales and South Australia, at least in the initial terms, is because those
ACT's been thrown in there too, Jake.
Yes, you are completely correct. Yeah, but the reason why they're doing those locations is because those locations will not require New Zealanders to quarantine for 2 weeks.
That's right.
Prior to being able to
come to us,
go
New
out.
Zealanders.
Exactly.
Yes.
So look, Morrison and his tourism minister counterpart have essentially said, look, come here, get a job if you like, find some love, but whatever you do, spend a lot of money.
Yep, That's basically it, isn't it? That's what it boils down to.
Exactly. They are, of course, hoping. We're all hoping that we'll be able to go over to New Zealand. The Prime Minister at this stage is not so open.
No.
Relatively open, but hasn't announced anything. Of course, Jacinda Ardern did say, the Prime Minister for New Zealand did say just last week that she flagged Queensland as the lucky first state to benefit from an influx of Kiwis, but that did not happen.
No, of course not, Jake. Well, we've gone. Now, I don't know how you guys are going up there, but I know in New South Wales here, we've had over a week without community transmission, which is just amazing. So you guys are the same up there?
Yeah, we're basically zero.
Well, Jake, there's a big difference between zero and basically zero.
I don't
know if you know, but this thing spreads pretty easily.
No, you're absolutely right. Zero community transmission. It's just the people that are Australia. Queensland, as does New South Wales, has we're two of the larger states for bringing in international travellers. So we do have the occasional international travel landing here, who may have or have maybe incubating COVID when they fly in.
More than reasonable. All right. Now, this is one of the biggest issues, Jake, facing our nation at the moment, I believe. I was having a wonderful chat with my stepdaughter last night, and we were talking about all things, obviously, politics, what's happening in the US, what's happening here. She's very active at her high school. She's, involved in a lot of, I guess you would call it, community activism, all that sort of stuff. And it was interesting last night because it turned to the aged care, and and she was on board with the fact that this is actually one of the really serious issues facing our country as post-coronavirus, and obviously pre-coronavirus. It's just that, as we know, coronavirus brings all things to light.
It exposes the flaws in systems.
Yeah, and for us, it's aged care, and this has been ongoing. There's been a lot of investigations happening into it, and a lot of findings as well. Of course, no one's ever to blame. However, we do know that some urgent changes to aged care are needed. So it's still in the news. Tell us what's happening now. Give us the weekly update. Dun, dun, dun.
Well, the Royal Commission into aged care has highlighted even 6 urgent changes that should occur to aged care, even in the interim of this
better
report.
Food, better TV. They need 4K televisions, Jake. If you've worked your whole life,
every single room.
Yep.
Must have a 4K
You've worked your
TV.
whole exactly right. You've worked your whole life.
Yeah.
You've done your dues to society, and you're gonna sit around without a 4K television? What is this?
It's exactly right, and that was one of the first findings of the no. So urgent changes have been called for in aged care as the federal government's pandemic preparedness for the sector has been ruled quite loudly as insufficient. The Royal Commission into Aged Care has made 6 key recommendations to the government that is demanded must be acted upon before December 1 this year. The report has pointed to the essential need. So number 1, the essential need for clear, not clean.
Clean leadership.
I mean, clean leadership is a given, but it'd be great if it was also clear.
Shower.
Yes, shower. The leadership.
I don't think Daniel Andrews has showered in 160 days or something. It's a mess.
I mean, he's looking pretty clean. He's looking pretty good considering. So number 1 is the essential need for clear leadership on communication. Number 2 is immediate funding to ensure that elderly residents can be visited by friends and family where appropriate, obviously. Number 3, the rollout of infection experts at homes. That was a major one, particularly during the early days of the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. The aged care homes that had an infection control expert or an infection control nurse on site fared significantly better than those who were just advised through external or web-based training.
Right.
Number 4 was an immediate launch of a Medicare benefit schedule to boost allied and mental health services. That was 4 and 5. And number 6 is the aged care advisory body.
Okay.
Yep.
What do they do?
They're going to advise on aged bodies. They're going to. So essentially, they are going to be a representative group. I mean, In any of these very large types of sectors, you need a peak body, and that peak body should be made up of, as I often argue, a bunch of the smartest people in the room. You get all of those people in the room, and you get them to advise on the various problems associated with that, so that it can be more rapid, more agile, more responsive, but moreover, more evidence-based. So the aged care minister, who of course has not had a great run during the Royal Commission and during the coronavirus issue, has said...
this is Richard Colbeck, yeah. Is
Says,
he the one who couldn't remember how many deaths?
That's it. Couldn't remember how many deaths, couldn't remember how many cases.
Right.
And indeed...
He's still going.
Yeah, I mean, during the Senate inquiry, he just up and walked out.
Yep, okay.
It was a bad form.
Yep.
But, I mean, the Prime Minister, I should say, a bit of a counterpoint, the Prime Minister did say that he was out dealing with an emerging issue in an aged care home. So, But invariably, I'm sure that you have a Chief Minister to do that sort of stuff. Exactly. So, yes, Richard Colbeck did say that the government has accepted all six and has announced $40.6 million as an initial response. More than 665 aged care residents, of course, have died from coronavirus in Australia with outbreaks affecting some 220 facilities. The nation's overall death toll reached 888 earlier this week, after another 2 people died in Victoria. So it's a massive thing. It's a thing that, as you very and quite rightly said, the aged care sector was rife with issues prior to the coronavirus pandemic, but invariably the pandemic did expose massive issues within that sector.
Yeah, and it's been fascinating going through a whole back catalogue, I suppose, of podcasts and information about the aged care sector. Obviously, not something that was really in the forefront of everyone's mind up until now. So yeah, I moving forward, I can see climate in terms of fires and in terms of koalas and land clearing. I can see aged care being part of the discussion. I can see, how we support businesses and how we support families moving forward out of the pandemic. What sticks around out of the pandemic. I can see that aged care playing a really huge role in the national discussion moving forward. Out of this.
I definitely hope so. I mean, it's one of those sectors that. Invariably there's a lot of sick and infirmed individuals. There's plenty of people who are, just getting on with their life and just unable to necessarily take care of the major things, necessarily so more so they need a bit of on-site help. But there is plenty of people who are sick and not necessarily the medical staff there to ensure that they are getting the best care appropriate to, them being human beings.
Yeah.
Let alone them being, sick human beings.
Yeah. And, training we know is a huge part of it as well in the aged care sector and that sort of thing too. So hopefully some incentives coming along out of that.
Indeed.
Jake.
Greg.
What a week.
What a week indeed.
Yeah. Look, if you haven't checked us out, if you haven't checked out the weekly shows, I mean, you could easily go back. I imagine, Jake. It's not too difficult to grab one of the daily shows and to have a listen to those. We started off with Pete Smisson from the Aussie English podcast. He's in Victoria, so we got a bit of a first-hand account about what's happening down there. We discussed Australia and USA relations on the second night. With Chris Matheson, who was one of the writers for the Bill and Ted movies, for all of the Bill and Ted movies, and also author of the Buddha's Story. On day 3, we had our wives on the show, Jake, which was just lovely.
It was so lovely.
Beautiful casual discussion, which was really nice. And then on the 4th night, we were very lucky to have Anna Weatherup, indie artist extraordinaire, who's just going great guns, trying to promote herself and trying to be really creative with the Australian music industry, within the Australian music industry in a coronavirus world, in a COVID normal world, as we're saying now. And so Anna Weatherup, check her out, check out that episode. And then, of course, Jake, the big one on day 5, we had Dan Illich on the show. Very passionate about climate change, about politics, and about podcasting in general as well. So check out any one of those shows. We're not continuing on with the daily shows. It was just a bit of an experiment. If, however, you do have some feedback on that, we'd love to hear your feedback on any of the daily shows that you listen to. We received precisely 0 feedback. So if you do have some... We'd love to hear it. You can. The easiest way would be to email us at thepouchthepodcast@gmail.com. I can virtually guarantee that we'd read out your email online. So please feel free to do that. Or you can send us a message on any of the socials, except TikTok.
Yep.
Yep.
We'll get you there, Greg.
There's only a finite amount of information we want to give the Chinese government.
I would suggest as well, listeners of the show, it's absolutely worth subscribing to the page on Facebook, or whatever your social media, except of course TikTok. But whatever your social media proclivity is, definitely find the page and join it, because if you participate in the live shows, you can comment along as we're walking through the news stories, as we're doing our shallow wade through the news stories. And I suppose most importantly, you can check out Greg's amazing assortment of shirts.
Absolutely.
And it's always fantastic to see which shirt Greg is going to wear for the show. So
it really depends on what time I wake up and what time we record. Usually a t-shirt means, hey, Greg just got out of bed and whacked on whatever he had before he went to bed.
I love it.
Yeah.
But I definitely
you should see what's on underneath.
Absolutely everything. No, I definitely encourage people to watch live, because it's a great way to obviously participate in the show. If you enjoy listening, I'm sure you'd like to join in on the action.
Absolutely. And if you'd love to share the love, you can do so by telling your friends, families, and foes to head to thepouchpodcast.com, where they can choose their favorite podcast player of choice and subscribe that way. I think we're buying kayaks, Jake. Not you and I, but my family.
Oh, look, it's the greatest thing. You love it. I've been a long-term kayaker. Absolutely love it. Yeah. We've got a massive lake, a street over, and
Lake Jake.
Lake Jake. That's exactly what I call it. It's surrounded by jacaranda trees, which is fantastic.
Stop jaking around.
But I love it. Your kids will love it. You'll love it. It's fantastic.
Well, we used to do it in Townsville, right? Like we used to live by the Ross River in Townsville. Beautiful river, and especially for kayaking, it was just perfect. Very flat, very just like everything in Townsville, very flat. And just a lovely place to be running along. You had mountains either side of you, all sorts of stuff. It was really great. But moving down here, we sort of discarded a few things, and especially because you have this whole sort of 6-month period where outside is a little bit daunting because of the whole winter situation. So we're very lucky now. We're back into the 30s. We're back into 29 degrees Celsius. So we're heading outside. And Fred Stokes just said kayak fishing is amazing. Good choice. It
is. As long as as long as you can. I mean, I think the most attractive thing about kayak fishing is not is being on a kayak rather than actually the fishing. But I don't necessarily. I've never enjoyed fishing.
No, I'm not a fisherman either, Jake. I feel a bit, always feel a bit un-Australian when I admit to that. But I don't like Kmart, and I don't like fishing.
Yeah, I don't mind Kmart.
What sort of monster am I?
Hey? Do you get in your Bunnings sausages?
Look, Bunnings is convenient,
It is.
I sometimes feel a bit better going to a smaller sort of area, but Bunnings just has what you want, really. So yeah, look, I'm a bit of a Bunnings sausage eater. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. Now look, Ania has also just said, great podcast. Thanks, guys. No worries, Ania. So we'll bring your message up there. No problem at all, Ania. There you go.
We did it for you.
Yep. We did it for you and Fred.
Yeah.
Yep. And Rachel May, who's probably listening as well. Are you listening? Are you listening? She's not. She doesn't have her headphones on. I don't think she's listening at all. I don't know how she's
watching, letting the lip read.
Oh, look, yeah, of course. We talk about politics all day, and then I say I don't like Kmart, and then all of a sudden Aaron Smith chimes in. You don't like Kmart, and you call yourself a teacher. Yep. That's it. We've caused controversy now. Hey?
Oh, it's about time. Look, let's get more of these controversial opinions out of future episodes, I think.
Oh, that's so funny. Anyway, look, it's not. I don't know. We'll have a whole episode dedicated to why Greg doesn't like chickens in Kmart, maybe. That'll give us our controversy. All right, Jaco. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for the daily podcast this week. And I look forward to speaking to you again very, very shortly. We've got some great episodes coming up. November 1st, I think, we're with the Politics Over Coffee podcast boys.
Where we get to talk about American things.
Yes.
Great.
Yes. Get back on that bandwagon.
See who's still alive.
All right, Jago. Thanks. Hey, Aaron Smith's still on it. Bugger the politics. Let's address the real issues. Yes, that's right. That's right. Why Target is better than Kmart. 15 reasons. All right. Okay. See you everyone. See you everyone on Facebook. See you, Jaco.
See ya.
Bye.